Good evening and welcome to NTD News. I'm Stephania Cox. Here are today's top stories. President Trump addresses the nation after meeting with health officials about the spread of the coronavirus. Joining him are experts from the CDC, officials from the U.S. Coronavirus Task Force. A federal court ruling in New York sides with the White House today. It says the Trump administration has the right to withhold funds from sanctuary cities, but a Supreme Court hearing on the subject might be on the horizon. The World Health Organization is being accused of underestimating the coronavirus outbreak. Some say the signals it's been sending out might have given certain countries the wrong impression. Democratic presidential candidates engaged in a heated debate last night, with Senator Bernie Sanders taking center stage. It may be some of the candidates' last chance to garner support and knock him out of the lead. And President Trump's re-election campaign sues the New York Times for libel. The lawsuit accuses the newspaper of trying to sway readers' opinions before the 2016 election. A new ruling from a federal appeals court says the Trump administration has the right to withhold funds from states that declare themselves sanctuary cities.
On Wednesday, the Second U.S. Court of Appeals in New York declared President Trump acted within his authority when he signed an executive order in January 2017. The order held back federal funds from New York City and 7 other states: New York, Connecticut, New Jersey, Washington, Massachusetts, Virginia, and Rhode Island, all of which resisted federal efforts to enforce immigration laws. A Justice Department spokesman called it a major victory for Americans. Wednesday's ruling overturned a previous lower court order that required the president to release the funds, a ruling made after the city and 7 states sued the Trump administration. They argued that the White House curbed the funds on political grounds. 3 other federal appeals courts have so far ruled on the same issue. The second court's decision conflicts with their decisions, opening the door for the case to be heard in the Supreme Court.
The Trump administration has asked Congress for $2.5 billion to prepare for the potential spread of the coronavirus. But the president is getting some pushback from Democrats. They say they're upset with how Trump is handling the outbreak.
In an effort to speed up the development of a coronavirus vaccine, the Trump administration has requested $2.5 billion from Congress. But some lawmakers are pushing back, criticizing the White House on its handling of the outbreak, which the CDC says will inevitably reach U.S. communities. Senator Chuck Schumer is requesting $8.5 billion, 3 times more than the administration. Meanwhile, the Secretary of Health and Human Services said on Wednesday the $2.5 billion is for 2020, but the amount they request may change next year.
So this would go through the end of 2020 fiscal year, and then we would work with appropriators on any adjustments to 2021 appropriations in the weeks and months ahead as we continue to learn on a daily basis about the spread of the disease.
House Democrats also didn't like the idea of diverting funds from the Ebola preparedness account to the coronavirus account.
The administration also asked permission to shift more than $500 million from Ebola preparedness. That is a mistake, and we are not robbing funding for other emergency activities.
To which Azar said right now the novel coronavirus is what's most pressing. He noted that the money can be restored to the Ebola account in the future. Azar added that if the funding is passed, some of the money would also go to buying more masks for health workers and patients infected with the virus.
Japan's prime minister urged sports events to be canceled or curbed immediately, while the coronavirus looms over the Summer Olympics just 5 months out.
With Japan battling the coronavirus, its Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is calling for sports and cultural events to be scrapped or curtailed for 2 weeks. That's amid concerns that the 2020 Tokyo Olympics could be cancelled. After facing criticism from opposition lawmakers, Abe answered questions about the possibility that the virus could stop the Games. He warned that the next 2 weeks were vital to stop the spread. Japan has close to 170 cases of infection, on top of the hundreds reported from the Diamond Princess cruise ship docked south of Tokyo. Abe's announcement came after Japan's professional baseball organisation said it would hold all matches scheduled until March 15 without spectators. The Tokyo Marathon has also been scaled back so that only elite athletes will compete. The Associated Press reported that a member of the International Olympic Committee said the Games are more likely to be cancelled than postponed or moved if the virus threat forced a schedule change, with a decision needed by May.
And one moment, please. President Trump's re-election campaign is filing a libel lawsuit against the New York Times. The suit alleges the newspaper knowingly published false information about collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. The lawsuit relates to an opinion piece published last month by a former New York Times executive editor. The campaign says the article was biased and its purpose was to sway the opinions of Times readers before the 2020 presidential election. The article claims Russia helped Trump get elected in 2016 so that he would implement pro-Russia policies. Trump's senior legal advisor says the newspaper sought to mislead its readers. Up next, find out how early signals from the World Health Organization might have led some countries to underestimate the coronavirus and how they're facing the consequences. That and more after the break.
Viewers have described China Uncensored like The Daily Show, but about China.
At the beginning, I was super excited when I got 500 views, and now the show's grown to about 500,000 subscribers on YouTube. One episode reached 7.9 million people. I'm a little freaked out that many people have seen my face. In 5 years, I see China Uncensored as the sole source of edutainment worldwide.
Factual,
honest news.
Not biased, but completely straightforward.
You're not emotionally going up and down.
Bringing morality back to newspapers.
The honest, old-fashioned journalism.
You're presenting the facts and letting the reader decide.
The Epoch Times is a fearlessly independent news media that publishes in 35 countries and 21 languages. Truth and tradition is our motto. Founded as an antidote to communist propaganda, today we're quickly becoming a household name across America. Our subscribers thank us for our relentless and unbiased coverage.
I've been part of the Epoch Times for nearly a decade because I've seen there's no other major media outlet in the world as devoted to real journalism. The Epoch Times has never had any corporate or political agenda. We only serve our readers, and we'll stay that way, no matter what.
We connected the dots around Spygate, the Obama administration's elaborate efforts against Trump's 2016 campaign. We often break news months ahead of other media on topics such as Chinese espionage, cyber warfare, subversion in America, and more. But our authoritative reporting didn't only just begin. We are tried and true.
Our paper was born out of the need to respond to a human rights catastrophe in China. It was enabled by the Communist Party's vicious and dishonest propaganda. We soon learned that Western media were picking up and amplifying the lies. The Epoch Times' truthful reporting exposed the Communist Party's lies for the Chinese people. But it also helped protect our Western audience. It disabused for them the lies in this propaganda. Our reporting has also helped uncover how communist ideas are taking root in our own country. The Epoch Times started as a small and unknown publication in one of the toughest media markets in the world. We have built it through hard work and trial and error.
We were founded in the year 2000 in Atlanta, Georgia, by Chinese Americans who had fled communist China. Our independent reporting came at a price. Our staff members in China were jailed and tortured for their reporting, some for as long as 10 years. Because our founders believed in truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance, the principles of the spiritual practice Falun Gong, they felt such sacrifices were worth it to ensure for the world an independent, honest media, one that would report on the most pressing issues of our time. As many major media are losing people's trust and declining further every day, the fastest growing newspaper in America delivers truth and tradition. Look us up today.
As cases of the coronavirus increase globally, what's the situation like inside China? Doctors from other provinces went to the epicenter to help out, but when they tried detailing their experiences, they were met with pushback from the regime. Our reporter Tiffany Meyer brings us more.
Despite 14,000 nurses from across China voluntarily going to Wuhan to help out at the epicenter of the coronavirus outbreak, it's not enough. Doctors from Guangdong went to Wuhan to help out and were overwhelmed by the lack of medical supplies and the sheer amount of patients. Two of them wrote an article in the journal The Lancet on Wednesday, detailing their experience and calling for international help. They described the physical challenges facing them, the lack of protective gear, the resulting pressure ulcers from wearing gear for long hours, and the difficulty of giving medicine to patients while wearing layers and layers of gloves. On top of that, they also suffered from psychological pressure and feelings of hopelessness. They end the article with a plea for help, stating, "But we need much more help. We are asking nurses and medical staff from countries around the world to come to China now to help us in this battle." Later, the medical team from Guangdong issued a statement through two media outlets in China, denying that the two doctors belonged to their team and saying what they wrote was not true. They also asked the two writers to withdraw their article from The Lancet and issue a public apology. After this issue was exposed on Twitter, the reports in Chinese media about the statement were deleted. And a curious incident on Wednesday inside Jingmen, a city in the Hubei province. The regime party leader and the mayor got a warning from the highest level of authorities because the number of confirmed coronavirus cases on February 19th seemed rather odd. It was minus 107. And since authorities have ordered people back to work in China amidst the reeling economy, some factories can do nothing but fake it. Some companies don't want to endanger the lives of their workers. Instead, they turn on the appliances so authorities will see they are still using 3,000 kilowatts per day, even though they don't have employees working. But the cost of running all the electrical appliances is still lower than the cost to quarantine all workers, if it turns out there's a confirmed case.
Despite mounting evidence that Chinese authorities are underreporting how many people have the coronavirus, the World Health Organization has kept praising the regime for its transparency. Now, some worry this kind of talk could have endangered other countries that believed them.
The country that kept a perfect record of 0 infections during the 2003 SARS outbreak is now facing one of the worst outbreaks of coronavirus outside of China. Japan has announced 170 cases and nearly 700 more on the Diamond Princess cruise. Public events being cancelled, tourist sites nearly abandoned, and at some stores, masks are out of stock. The Japanese government is facing mounting criticism from both its own citizens and people overseas for its slow response and sloppy measures against the virus.
本当に遅いんでね、もっと早く順番にねしていけばねいいんだけど。
あれで結構ね、やり方がうまくなかったかなというところはありますよね。だと市中感染がもうおそらくね結構始まってると思うんですよ。
Some say the Japanese government's underestimation of the risk has been influenced by the World Health Organization.
We know the Japanese people always follow the rules, so no matter what the international organization says, they would believe it.
The WHO had repeatedly suggested that countries do not need to restrict incoming travel from China.
For the moment, WHO does not recommend any broader restrictions on travel or trade. There is no reason for measures that unnecessarily interfere with international travel and trade.
Even at a time when the Chinese themselves are hardly having any travel and trade going on.
Virtually deserted.
Japan chose to follow the WHO, a neighboring country to China and a top destination for Chinese tourists. Japan allowed passengers from Wuhan to come in without any screening until 1 week after Wuhan city itself was under lockdown. The first domestic case in Japan is a bus driver who had never been to China but had been driving Chinese tourists around. WHO had drawn criticism for what it's been telling the world.
The WHO chief is pretty pro-Beijing, so his attitude to China, many Japanese people know he is under pressure, or he might get some benefits. So this is really a huge miscalculation.
이번에 아주 WHO가 나는 굉장히 신뢰를 잃었다고 생각하고 우리는 그거를 다 받아들이면 안 돼요. 우리 제일 우선은 국민의 생명과 안전과 건강이에요.
Meanwhile, the agency has continued to praise the Chinese authorities.
Once again, I would like to thank the government of the Republic of China for its cooperation and transparency.
And side by side, you have started serious public health measures. And this is very, very important, and really we're proud of that. And the other important element is the political commitment and your personal leadership, which we have been following.
Let me be clear. This declaration is not a vote of no confidence in China. On the contrary, WHO continues to have a confidence in China's capacity to control the outbreak. I'll repeat this. Let me be clear.
A petition on change.org demanding WHO's chief to resign has gathered more than 400,000 signatures. The petition accuses him of underestimating the virus and taking numbers from the Chinese regime as truth, when the organization should have provided neutral and accurate information to the world's people. Penny Zhou, NTD News.
A WHO delegation has just finished an inspection trip to China. The organization's head praised the regime for its commitment to helping keep people alive and said if he had COVID-19, he would want to be treated in China. And healthcare professionals are speaking up about the problems they see in modern medical practices. Doctors say the business side of healthcare interferes, making caring for their patients harder. More on that after the break.
Our investigative reporters at the Epoch Times have spent 18 months uncovering the biggest political scandal in modern history. We connected the dots around Spygate, the actions by Obama-era officials against Trump's 2016 presidential campaign. Join me on Declassified as we bring you up-to-date developments on this unfolding scandal.
In the modern-day healthcare industry, who is really in charge of how patients are treated? NTD's Melina Wisecup talks with a doctor who explains how the business side of healthcare can interfere with doctors taking care of their patients.
More physicians are beginning to voice their concerns about what some call a broken healthcare system. Former psychiatrist Dr. Wendy Dean experienced it herself. She said that oftentimes doctors have to answer to the healthcare system and insurance companies before they can provide the care they know is best.
What kind of external pressures and, like you said, the wedges, do you have to overcome in order to provide good care for the patients?
In my case, hospitalization for mental health issues is another one. You would have to call and justify what their symptoms were, the risk that they were at. The person on the other end of the phone who had never seen the patient would be saying, yes, that qualifies, no, that doesn't qualify. So that became a real dilemma for me, is how can I, in good faith, taking good care of this patient, send them back home when I know that's a risk and that they aren't going to be getting the care that they need.
Situations like these happened over and over again, and it isn't just her. After talking to her colleagues, she realized that many healthcare professionals feel the same way.
Trying to see that person and knowing that I know they need an MRI scan, but I know their insurance company is going to make me jump through a whole bunch of hoops to get that MRI scan.
Dr. Nick Sawyer from UC Davis told Kaiser Health News, the health system is not set up to help patients, it's set up to make money. Dr. Talbot and Dr. Dean started calling it moral injury. The term is normally associated with military members, but the doctors say it's appropriate in healthcare too, and others agree. After publishing an article using the term, the two were flooded with emails from healthcare professionals who said they could relate.
So what kind of impact do you think this has on the medical industry, patient care or future and current doctors?
It has impacts across all of them. For future doctors, they look at the folks who are out in practice now and they say, that does not look like what I signed up to do. And so how am I going to make this work for me? And part of what they're deciding about is whether or not to invest as much in the calling.
She says returning to an environment where doctors can invest in that inner calling and where their knowledge is valued are the first steps to making a change towards genuine patient care. Melina Weiskup, NTD News, New York.
Up next, the Berlin Film Festival is showing a series of documentaries. We look at two of the most interesting ones. See what we discovered after the break. From a Russian man digging 3 stories below his garage to segments of the Berlin Wall found in unexpected places, documentaries at the Berlin Film Festival show the world in new ways. NTD's Germany correspondent Christian Watchen has the story.
This year's Berlin Film Festival presents a wide range of documentaries. The U.S. production, The American Sector, is a quest across America in search of segments of the Berlin Wall. The director spent 3 years traveling the country, capturing impressions of more than 60 pieces in their new homes. They use the segments of the wall as a means to allow people to open up in an honest way about big topics. From a little neglected museum object at the Museum of World Treasures in Wichita, Kansas, to a front piece at the National Underground Railroad Freedom Center in Cincinnati, Ohio. A world premiere in Berlin, the film explores how a symbol of communist tyranny gives new meaning to its American host.
The American Sector is one of 21 films nominated for Best Documentary. This out of more than 100 documentaries showing at the festival this year, at theaters across Berlin.
Garage People is a documentary shot in Russia's far north, exploring the phenomenon of garage settlements. For many Russian men, garages have become sanctuaries. One man spent half of his life digging 3 stories below his garage, mostly by hand, just following his heart. Another man uses his workshop to deal with his Parkinson's. For many, the garages are homes away from home where they can follow their passions and carve out some freedom. Reporting by Christian Watchen, NTD News, Berlin.
And that's all for today's news. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Stephanie Cox.